Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Greg, good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I guess we better be fleet of foot today, Mr. Luton.
Yes, Extra Fleet, Bobby Fleet, and what's that? There's a band named Body Fleet and the Beat. Bobby, I'll get it right later on.
Really?
Yeah,
you want me to look that up?
Bobby Fleet and the Band with the Beat. But nevertheless, today's episode is all about what's going on, all the cool things going on across the continent of Africa, especially in supply chain, especially in global business. So much that doesn't get enough visibility and coverage. And Greg, this has been one of our favorite new series, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have been amazed, and I think we both have, of what we have learned already just from what is going on in Africa. The incredible complexities, the incredible difficulties, right, of such a vast place with so many countries on it, and the difficulty both in bringing emerging markets up into kind of first world market status, and also all of the dynamics between, but just the incredible growth that's going on, and amazing innovation that's happening there.
Agreed. We've got a
undervalued for sure.
Yes. So late breaking news bulletin. So
yes,
Murphy's Law is alive and well, as we've long noted. And Jenny Froome, the one and only Jenny Froome, typically joins us and co-hosts this series with us. But we've got some internet and some power issues, so she may join us about halfway through, and that's fine. We're very transparent about that kind of stuff here because everyone's experiencing it. So we'll miss Jenny. Hopefully she can join us just a few minutes late, but we will see. We definitely want to share. Hey, SAPICS is a great community, kind of bringing people together to help further the industry in South Africa and really across Africa and the region. Y'all can learn more at SAPICS, SAPICS.org. They've got a great virtual event coming up in August. Greg, I also want to share one more resource. Let's see here if we can do this. We've got an interesting webinar coming up on March 23rd that really we've gotten a bunch of questions and inquiries about. Industry 4.0. It's nothing new, really. However, there's a ton of new creative applications, especially when it comes to the manufacturing industry. We've got two pros to know to be joining us on March 23rd for free. Y'all can sign up in the link in the show notes. And Greg, we're looking forward to hosting that one, aren't we?
I am, particularly because of two things. One of the main questions I get frequently is, what the heck is Industry 4.0? So not to be a spoiler, but in brief, think of the Industrial Revolution taking so many things from manual to mechanical. Think of in Industry 4.0 taking mechanical to technological and improving both manual and mechanical processes through that. That's the simplest explanation I can give. Let's see what Tobias and Mike have to say when they join us. And note that Tobias also is working at a division of Porsche. So do you think I'll ask him about cars?
Oh, definitely. I'm bringing my Diet Coke and popcorn and just watch y'all go at it. It's one of my favorite parts. All right, so y'all check that out, March 23rd. Of course, you can find a link in the show notes. Let's do this. And of course, standard disclaimer, if you enjoy this conversation, be sure to find Supply Chain Now, Tequila Sunrise, and the rest of our properties wherever you get your podcast from. Now, one of my favorite parts, beyond meeting our guests, we got a wonderful guest teed up. Jaco Maass will be joining us here just momentarily. But we love saying hello to everybody. This is one of my favorite parts of these. The world kind of gets a lot closer, right, when we jump online together and enjoy good conversation. So pratique. You can't do a live stream without pratique, can you, Greg?
I can't. And I feel like I might never eat Indian food again until I am boycotting Indian food until Pratik can get here for the lunch that I have promised him.
Wow, that's big news. Big news.
Yep. Never again.
Never again.
As far as any of you know.
Susan via LinkedIn, great to see you here. Peter Bolay, wonderful interview earlier this week. Hopefully this finds you and your extended family doing well. I know that you had some developments there this week. But hopefully this finds you well. And I love that soccer ball as a translator, as a bridge. I love that that came out in the interview. Pasquina via LinkedIn. Great to see you here. Thanks so much for being a part. Salmon via LinkedIn. Simon is back. Simon had some great questions earlier this week, Greg. And you remember them too, because you're laughing a little bit. Simon.
Well, Simon's obviously channeling Good Morning Vietnam.
I missed that, and he's not afraid of asking the Greg White question. So I love that about Simon. So great to have you here. Tom is here early, and there's a countdown. He says, "I did not know that." Hey, Tom, great to see you. And
hey, don't tell anybody about that countdown. We've gotten some nasty grams about that. Somebody who has claimed a countdown.
Yes. Gosh, it's interesting.
That is a desperate business if that's what your claim to fame is.
You get things from the free usage, communities we're all part of, and then all of a sudden you see claims here and there. So it's interesting. But Tom, you said Mike Lackey looks familiar. I think Mike made an appearance just a few days ago on your podcast. So hope this finds you well. Great to have you here. Aaron Peterson, great to see you. Another great day in the supply chain universe. What's up, gang?
Didn't we ask the question
if you graduated?
Yeah, right. Did we get the answer? I don't recall that.
No, Aaron, you owe us the answer.
No pressure, Aaron, of course, but we're all very curious, as you can imagine.
We'd love to reconnect. So we sat down with Aaron in February 2020 with him and 3 of his colleagues from Morgan State University. And Aaron would love to know what's the latest with you and your career. So I hope this finds you well. Gary Smith is here with us, and Greg's got his palette just for you, Gary.
Yes, Gary. See, just for you. My palette is back in place. Also, Gary informed me that it was 62 there in the last couple days, and he has his bike out. He has his bike out ready to ride, all tuned up with new brakes and ready to go.
As I learned, Greg, as he made a guest appearance and led a episode of This Week in Business History, he's a biking enthusiast. He's very passionate about biking, and he knows all the equipment and stuff. So we'll have to pick his brain soon enough.
Hey, that's a tough supply chain, by the way. My best buddy Todd Raines is, and I would say he is a biking obsessionist, and he has been talking for months about the struggles of getting parts in for these bikes themselves, of course, and now getting parts in. Well, you think in a year that they would have figured it out, but I guess just the uptick in who knows what it's.
Well, that's why I'm not getting my 20 miles a day in, just so you know. We're waiting on 4 or 5 spare parts.
I'm going to have to write that excuse down. That's going to be part of my 17 pages of notes.
Peter says, hey, great show, Greg, with Gregor Purdy. Agreed. And he's got some tequila sunrise recommendations for you.
Well, actual tequila, Scott, on that episode, we literally, on the second part of that interview, the second half of that interview, we spend twice as much time talking about tequila as we do about how to build principles and culture into your business. Now, it well more than evened out because of the 2 episodes. So
I got to catch up. I've got to catch up, and don't give me a pop quiz.
You can learn a lot about both the principles and culture of your company and tequila in episode 2.
Look forward to that. Get Tequila Sunrise wherever you get your podcast from. Daria, hey, great to have you. Thanks so much for your recent comments, and look forward to your contributions here today. Okay, we got to stop there. We got a great guest. We're going a little bit longer because we're saying the low, but also we're hoping to give Jenny a little extra time. So who knows? We'll see if we can't have her join us, as we get deeper in the conversation. But for now, Greg, let's bring on our exceptional guest today. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's bring in Jaco Maass, General Manager at Shift DX. Jaco, how are we?
Oh, you two guys
had no idea what you're getting yourself into, did you?
Listen, you were so entertaining. Why did you bring me on now?
So, we're glad. We really enjoyed the pre-show conversation. Of course, your ears have been burning for weeks as Jenny and others have been singing your praises. So looking forward to diving in. But we've got an answer to our mystery, and I want to share that. As Aaron says, he's going to have a big announcement coming up. That's exciting. And he also says he's received an offer already. So as soon as his clearance is done, he's in the door, he's going to make the announcement. So hopefully we can help him make that announcement. So Aaron, that's great news. Okay, so Jaco, let's get to know you better. And we all miss Jenny. We'll hopefully Murphy's Law will cooperate. We'll have her join us. But let's start by getting to know you a little better. Before we talk heavy lifting and industry and thought leadership, let's get to know Jaco Maass a little bit better. So tell us, where are you from, and give us an anecdote or two about your upbringing.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thanks for the opportunity. It's great talking to you and your community. I grew up on the west coast of South Africa. Now, you will most probably recognize that English is my second language. So, I sometimes say that you must be careful, because if the English runs out, there's some shorter words that we start using to describe difficult concepts. I went. You will enjoy that, Greg. I went to University of Stellenbosch, a beautiful town, well known. Studied agricultural administration. Started off my working career in the citrus industry. Really, and that's most probably the only place where I really got to know IT so much. Did a lot of things there, and then moved over to the banking industry. Now, for 10 years, I did cash flows and people's financial statements, which is an interesting thing, and it becomes quite relevant in my story a little bit later on. I joined BKB, a 100-year-old agricultural organization situated here in Port Elizabeth, where I'm coming from, in 2010, specifically looking at commodity finance and how you actually can start utilizing a commodity and utilize that as a underlying security, which is also relevant to the whole African story. In 2013, I moved over to IT. Now, who would believe that almost halfway through my working career, you can change from a corporate banker over into IT, which was funny. Ever since I've been here in Port Elizabeth, got a beautiful wife and 3 kids, 2 daughters, and I implemented the ERP, and then through the stress, had a little bit of a surprise kid at number 3 there. So,
it's been a great implementation.
It was, well, the stress was a little bit heavy there, Greg, but it is a boy, and it is really fun, and I really do enjoy him. So do ERP implementations.
from oranges, was that your citrus, right? From oranges to banking to technology, that's quite the path, right?
Hey, but I do think that IT needs more bankers,
Yes, and bankers need more IT, right?
So does agriculture, truly.
Yes. Which is what we're going to talk about today, agricultural supply chain. So we got a lot more comments coming in, and I wish we could reference everybody. But hello, Azalia and Arena, who's in Cape Town. Andrea is here, which is wonderful. So hello and welcome everybody. So Jaco, so really quick before we start talking heavy lifting, give us one hobby that you enjoy doing, kind of unplug, and maybe a favorite recent read, a book or so.
Yeah, I must say, I would almost like to say that digital transformation is my hobby. If you ask my wife, I'm constantly busy with it. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, keeping myself busy with this. Such an interesting field. But yeah, I do enjoy fishing a little bit and exercising. But otherwise, I try to keep a balanced lifestyle. The latest interesting reads, I don't want to go into a bookstore because there's such a lot. The latest is very much books that I've bought a series on that is all about the business models, value creation, and how do you actually deliver value to your customers. But but one of the books that stands out is called Friction.
Friction. Okay. We're going to have to dive into that one. All right. One last question before I turn over to Greg here. You mentioned in your downtime, you enjoy digital transformation. Right. So, and you talked about in your profile that you're very passionate and in love with the world of data analytics. So where What's the genesis of that? Where did that start?
Yeah, I think it started when I was in the bank. When I was in a bank called ABSA in South Africa, Barclays or Barclays, as you guys will call it, bought ABSA over, and they brought something what was called Value Aligned Performance Management tool, which created all about what is the value of a customer. And we even had in our KPIs something that we had a cross sell. So how much product do I sell to a customer? So when I joined this agricultural organization, BKB, it has the largest national footprint in South Africa as agricultural organization. And I was so intrigued on this footprint and said there must be value in the clients that they had. So the data analytics then portion came, and this is where the whole 9 yards come in, because I needed to start in IT physically with the WAN and the LAN, and then started moving up to an ERP and then to business intelligence, and eventually getting to analytics and starting showing what the value is in a relationship that you have with your customer.
So on that note, one quick comment, and then Greg, we're going to pass baton. So we were talking tequila before you joined us, Jaco, and I've got to reference this. 2 quick comments. First, AAs in the Wichita, Kansas, air capital of the world, is referencing Andrea, and we know that Guadalajara is the tequila capital of the world. Your evil twin, Andrea, offered us a couple of shots already. So AA, great call out there. And I got to reference this comment from Tom, going back to the implementation. Hey, glad to hear the stressful ERP implementation had a happy ending, Jaco.
Oh, for sure, a happy ending. But it's with me for the rest of my life. I can promise you that.
Yeah, that is right. All right. So, Gregory, where are we going from here?
Yeah, well, first of all, I had to laugh when you said that digital transformation was your recreation, because I can relate. You know, when you have to do a bio or something like that, and people ask you about your recreation, you really have to think about it.
Yeah.
And I realized the number of times that I've passed up going to play tennis or racing cars or whatever to work, and I have actually started telling people I think work might be my recreation, right? So I empathize with where you're at for sure. But you are so dedicated to this, so dedicated to digital transformation and what's going on, that you have a company, Shift DX, right? So tell us a little bit about what you all do there. I'm fascinated by how that might. I mean, and I know you probably may not be able to make the comparison, but I'm fascinated by how that might be different in South Africa than it is in other parts of the world. But tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your company.
I think the company was created really as a flow out, and you earlier discussed about the 4th industrial revolution. You know, as an IT manager, I think you're constantly being questioned about what is the Uber and the Airbnb type of transformation that's going to happen in your industry. So, you know, and one of the things that the blockchain, for instance, very much in the BKB concept, is something that is most probably has the opportunity to disrupt this 100-year-old organization, because it's all about trust. So I try to convince my very much going out MD, who was at these retirement stages, to give me some money to do a proof of concept on the blockchain. And the success from that then leveraged us into, well, let's start putting these technologies out in the support of the South African agricultural industry. So what Shift then starting doing is taking the 4th industrial revolution as a tool for the primary South African farmer, if it's emerging or commercial, and making it a reality for them by utilizing technologies like blockchain and advanced analytics, auctions, digital auctions. And, you know, the journey has just been unbelievable, but still also very stressful.
So I'm interested in this whole concept. You know, I'm from a farm state here in the States, Kansas. So no, I don't know Dorothy before you ask, Jaco, but I am interested in the transformation of of the agricultural supply chain. So what are you seeing happening there? Is there anything you think people really ought to know that they're not completely aware of in the agricultural supply chain today?
Yeah. I think, Rick, there's definitely two things. There's two worlds that we need to put apart when we talk about agriculture in Africa and maybe more closer to home to South Africa. There is the traditional commercial farmer that has always been very competitive in the international market. So if we can just for a moment talk about the commercial farmer, the South African commercial farmer has gone 4 years without a subsidy from government. And I think what has happened through COVID, and this is a prediction, and I've if you read articles in Economist and all of that, I think the South African farmer should now really benefit from what is coming out of this crisis, because they had to be competitive in an international market with industries that was subsidized. Now, if those subsidies starts flowing to social welfare, they are really competitive. Now, so that's on the one side, the commercial farmer that has adopted these technologies to a tremendous effect to be competitive in a market that was subsidized. Then on the other side, we're talking about the emerging farmer and the challenges that we are having in Africa with regards to the emerging farmer and bringing them into a commercial market. I think it's just going to be alleviated by something like the reality of fourth industrial revolution tools that it brings.
So, in light of what you've shared already, and you mentioned a little while back about how stressful and challenging the journey's been, let's apply. Digital transformation is everywhere. And we've launched a great series, been well received by Kevin L. Jackson, digital transformers, just because it's so front and center in every conversation, regardless of industry, sector, you name it. When it comes though to agricultural supply chain, and because this, I think, for me at least, I can tell you, there's not a whole bunch. I'm so much a consumer when it comes to the topic of that.
That's it. Most of us.
Yeah. So what when it comes to digital transformations in that sector, what are some unique challenges that you're seeing that's inherent to agricultural supply chain?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges are very much infrastructure, and it makes me think of, there was a Time magazine article that was once written about the differences between India and China, because in the early 80s they were exactly on the same stage with regards to their development. But there's two things that China did different. They invested in education and they invested in infrastructure. Now, if you look at the challenges that we have in this country with regards to is very much those two things. So education and the ability to generate infrastructure. The infrastructure is not just about roads; it's also about electricity, like Jenny would confirm this evening.
Right now, yeah,
yeah, electricity,
and in Parliament right now lobbying for underground power.
She must go green, Jenny. Anyway, and education, because one thing that I've learned in the banking industry was all about how do you transfer the ability to manage risk. How do you give the emerging farmer the ability to manage risk? Because that is the big thing that we need to address.
So let me, Greg, before we move right along, speaking of Jenny, I want to share a comment here. Good, Jaco. Great job as always, chaps. So sorry not to be there. Area fiber issue, as they say. Working on it apparently, so might see you later. Great, at least can listen. So Jenny, hope this finds you well. So glad to see you, and sorry for the challenges there. Also want to share this comment from Rhonda and Dr. Bumpenza Zimmerman. She kind of piggybacks on something Greg shared, and I think this is a great comment. Your passion often filters your work life and fun time habits too. When you love what you do, I agree, Greg White. Work, as we call it, can fuel our passion in life. I bet she meant to say, which is a blessing when it is truly purposeful for humanity. I appreciate you sharing your perspective on this aspect. Good stuff. I would add, Rhonda shared with me yesterday. She apologized for the typo, which also always messes with my brain, because she I think she's on the treadmill yesterday out in beautiful Arizona as she was typing listings. So Rhonda, thanks so much for sharing, and thanks for throwing me some curveballs there. All right, so Greg, where are we going next?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have talked about this topic. So every time we've talked about supply chain in Africa with so many people, but every time we can get another perspective on that, I think it's incredibly valuable. And so, one of the things we always ask is, what do you see as the current or primary challenges, and maybe just solely in the ag supply chain, but what do you see as the current challenges in Africa specifically that either are being dealt with or need to be dealt with, or are hindering or helping the marketplace there?
Yeah, I think, like I said, if we really look at the commercial farmers, and I visited a place called Grootfontein in Namibia last year, and I was astonished by how those emerging farmers utilize something like a electronic tag, which they put in an animal's ear, which immediately allowed a individual farmer, because the challenges of Africa is very much what we all know as the fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. There are a lot of small community farmers, guys that has 10 animals or farms on a small field. How do you bring those type of guys into a commercial market that supplies into the US or the Europe market? But coming back to my story on Namibia and Grootfontein, is I was astonished by how, if you can utilize something like technology, how you can bring those small groups all together into a commercial package that you can then deliver into a commercial market. So yes, the challenges very much is getting the technology to them, getting them connected, and making them part of. But it is totally a different market than what we are used to. The way that they trade their animals or they trade their commodities.
So, Greg, before we move forward, I want to share this. Speaking of this industry, from Simon, he worked for an agricultural firm, and his single biggest challenge was the location of the project. It was in the middle of bloody nowhere, fields, difficult to get to, and nothing there for us to transform and building power, etc. Interesting perspective.
Yeah, I must say that there's a lot of businesses coming now into Africa, investing in sorting those problems out there. Sorry, Greg, please.
No. Well, you were kind of going towards what I wanted to kind of spin out on there, and that is, there are so many of these entities. I think of, again, Kansas history, learning about the cattle pens in Abilene, Kansas, how farmers and ranchers would bring their flocks to this common market, and they would be sold individually or maybe blended or whatever. But you're talking about the situation where instead of thousands of head of cattle, 10 heads of cattle from 1,000 farmers, right?
Not even 10, we're talking 2 or 3.
Yeah. And the challenge there becomes, things like quality, even breed or provenance, pedigree, whatever there. And as you said, treated so differently. Have you seen some advancements in how to manage that? Share that with us, would you?
Yeah, this company that owns Shift is as I mentioned earlier, BKB, who's an 100-year-old agricultural organization specifically, and you will see the paintings behind me, the fiber industry, wool, mohair, that type of thing, and also livestock trade. BKB has, over the past 15 to 20 years, developed, and this is an amazing thing, they developed these emerging farmers and taking part in an international wool market. And Greg, they are delivering wool physically in a plastic bag and taking part in an international market. And what we have seen, because they see value, because they see that this is not, there's value, they immediately start investing into that industry, and they look well after their animals. Listen, we are not talking about farms where somebody owns a piece of land. This is communal land, and these things walk, and there's a chief that oversees them. They come together in sharing sheds, And it's unbelievable how they then in the sharing sheds share as a community and then deliver into this community, into this international market, and this organization handles this. And BKB pays out, I think, in the region of 80,000 of these emerging farmers each year. They handle them and bring them into this international community. And this is what I'm seeing is that there's an opportunity to start utilizing the fourth industrial revolution technologies into other industries, bringing them in and supplying into a world that is going to require 30% more food over the next 30 years.
Powerful. Share a couple comments here. As Leah says, there's so much deep-rooted history. Greg, you're kind of speaking to this, and family lineage engraved in these long-running agricultural companies. And she also, we're talking digital transformation here today. Curious to understand the difficulties in digitizing agricultural processes. I presume that farmers have a very structured and traditional culture, rightfully so, and way of doing things that could cause difficulty in integrating digitization. They understand what works, but digitization could enlighten all of us on what works best or worst. Any comments there, Jaco?
Yeah, the interesting thing about a farmer, and if this is not just a South African thing, I think this is an international thing. A farmer is what they call, I think the word is a kinetic learner. They learn through seeing. So you need to show them. You need to physically show them. Now, this is sometimes a challenge in saying that you need to choose the road that you go down to on, and then hopefully get to a point where you can show it to somebody and say, this is how this thing works, in order then to say that, but does this create value? So they, sitting with the farmer and showing him this digital transformation can do the following for you. But, we all know the book of Geoffrey Moore that's called Crossing the Chasm. What we seen last year, we implemented our first digital auction on the 15th of February, I think the last one. COVID just closed the chasm. And, we are sitting in our first year on about 200 digital auctions that we hosted this year in the country.
Yes, necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, especially Azalea's comment there. It's really interesting knowing that dynamic, having worked on the family farm, and realizing that's why I'm a kinetic learner. I'm literally the person who says, draw me a picture, right? And I think that is true, because so much of what you do is tangible. It is inherently tangible, and in some cases solely tangible. You raise a beast, you sell that beast, you get physical capital in your hand, right? Things like that. You raise a crop, you sell that crop, you get physical capital in your hand. And as I was thinking about this a little bit earlier when you were talking, Jaco, it always comes down to economics. When you said they'll treat their animals better when they see how the process works and see the value that it brings, literally see those things, right? They can see, for instance, if you're talking about sheep's wool, they can see better wool. Anyone who has herded sheep knows better wool when they see it, literally knows that. And of course, when they see that additional capital from that, then they see the value, and that motivates them to go back next season and change the way they do things, right?
Yes. Very much so.
So when you've seen that occur, and Azalea sort of enunciated that as well, but are there other aspects of supply chain or of agriculture or the confluence of the two in Africa that you think needs more visibility, needs to be seen more, either by the participants or by the general marketplace, in order to bring it along in terms of digital or just general transformation?
Yeah, I think we specifically think the first hurdle that we need to cross is traceability. Knowing where the product come from, knowing how the product has been handled. Personally, I've got a bee in my bonnet about, do you really know what you're eating?
Right.
Because that question has been popping up, or let me put it like this, since I joined this specific business, understanding what's in your meat, I think you need to ask the question, where does my meat come from, and what did that animal eat? Anyway, that said, I think coming back to our challenges are if we can start doing traceability and then adding value from that, adding the analytical portion to that, so that we can start improving the ability of that farmer, and for him to become more efficient as well as more productive. So that's the first hurdle that we would like to cross, is most probably the traceability portion in world food production.
It's certainly possible, right? They're doing that with fishing in Indonesia. So I mean, you can literally trace a fish all the way back to the actual boat and fisher person who actually caught it. So the possibility exists, and probably one of the links is those ear tags that you're talking about.
But isn't this exciting times? This is so bringing technology like blockchain, IoT, all of these things coming to the party and starting solving problems that we've been having for decades.
Well, you know what it does, Jaco? I think, again, thinking back, you've got me thinking a lot about my youth. But thinking back, I think about when I was
tequila.
that inhibits the thinking. Okay. So thanks for waking me up. I think back to our version of blockchain, which was we knew which rancher we wanted to buy a side of beef from every year because we liked how they treated their cattle. We liked how they fed them. We knew that they were a good breed. We knew that they were fed properly, so there was just the right amount of fat on the animal. And because the world has become a much, much broader place, and we get our goods, things like citrus, from so far afield, right? South African citrus gets sold in the United States, right? So because we get these things from so far afield, that ability to go and watch your neighbor raise their produce doesn't exist anymore. So this is the technology equivalent of being able to know your neighbor.
But Greg, it's all about the story that the product that you consume. When I was a banker, I worked in the Western Cape's wine industry quite a lot. I had quite a lot of wine cellars. And the thing is, when you drink a bottle of wine, doesn't matter where it comes from, you are actually drinking a story. When you know the story of the brand, the wine tastes different. When you know the story of your tequila, the tequila tastes different. And we need to do that with all our food. It just tastes different when you know where it comes from.
And I know we've talked a lot about beef through this conversation, but chicken, the poultry industry here in Georgia, it's one of the, I think it's the second largest export for the state. We've got poultry farms everywhere. I can only imagine some of the similar and unique digital challenges they've got in the poultry industry. Let's see here. And by the way, it's interesting also because you're talking about what, got to know where your beef comes from and what the animals have been eating. Gosh, you walk into a grocery store these days and you see chicken breasts over here, and they're huge. They're massive. The birds must have been the size of giraffes. And on other, with no hormones injected, it's more. It looks closer to what we've become accustomed to seeing. It's fascinating. I want to share a couple of comments here. First off, I think Peter was asking to clarify. If I heard you right, Jaco, you were saying PKB was that right? PKB.
Yes.
And
PKB.
And is that an investment firm? Was that a bank? Is that a financial institution? What is PKB again?
It's an agricultural organization that is primarily looking after. They do about 60%, 68, 65% of South African wool clip. And we do livestock auctions. And every day, about 7 auctions for every working day somewhere in the country, we host auctions. Then they have grain depots, grain industry, raisin business, sugar from our neighboring Swaziland, and then about 60 retail branches that serves the primary agricultural farmer.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying. Peter, thanks for asking the question there. Tom piggybacks on Greg's earlier comment, as well as being able to identify the fishermen. I want certification that was transported at proper temperatures and in sufficient time. Excellent point. Excellent point there.
All of that is possible. Not all of that is integrated in every supply chain, but yeah, certainly.
Agreed. Peter says, back to chickens. You got to watch this movie, Super Size Me 2, Holy Chicken. It came out a few years back. I think I started watching that one, but it wasn't quite as good as the first one, Peter. But hey, I'll have to revisit it.
I think I'd prefer my ignorance. What little I know about chicken, I think I'm just happy with my ignorance.
Right, exactly. Rhonda says, our land, air, and water health impacts everything in the human body supply chain. Excellent point there. And there's a couple folks that don't want to ask questions, but David says, hey, send them to me. I'm going to ask anyone anything. So I love that, David. And by the way, quick update. We're publishing a YouTube interview with David tomorrow. We sat down with David a week or two ago. Really enjoyed it. Love his comments here on the live stream and look forward to sharing his story there. Okay. So we haven't talked yet, Greg, about of all the things taking place across not just South Africa, but across the whole African continent. What's an item or two, Jaco, that you feel should have more visibility across the globe?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I think the more visibility for the African is the uniqueness of the African farmer. They are bringing something to the party which you don't necessarily find in other economies, and it's the what I've seen in this country working with them is the ability to just they also got a love for their land, they've got a love for their country, but yeah, so I think for me their uniqueness is just the skills that they have, but it's different. It's totally different in what we find in the rest of the world.
Well, it really that's why, Greg, I've really enjoyed our conversations with Jenny, and last month we had Kabir with Zippy Logistics, and some of our other offline conversations. It's fascinating. The more you dive in, the more you learn, the more you're made aware of all the things that you just had, how big, at least for me, my blind spot has been to both South Africa and Africa as a region, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for us to think of. I mean, I think the vast majority of Americans think of that place that you send books and 22 cents a day and T-shirts to after the Super Bowl, right? But it's far more and far more advanced than that. Of course, there are those areas, pockets, in some cases, large populations of people who are virtually destitute. But the fascinating awakening, I think, for a lot of people that we've interacted with after having these sessions is just how much advancement and how rapid the advancement is in Africa. I mean, it is turning in many countries from an agrarian society to an industrialized society to an industry, a technology-enabled industry. It's going from agrarian through the Industrial Revolution to Industry 4.0 in a matter of years rather than centuries.
Yeah, but what you agree that Africa is basically the last frontier. We've developed China, we've developed India, so now this continent is sitting, and the question, what I'm seeing in Africa is this is going to be China is moving in, and they are situating themselves very much in Africa. They're building infrastructure big time. So the question is, this is the last economy that is going to be developed, and there's huge opportunities. But as I said, it is a different way of working with them.
Well, I think it is very complex, isn't it? I mean, with the number of countries and even tribal and other cultural divides, even within those countries, it is a significantly complex environment.
You beat me to it, Greg, because that's the other big takeaway.
I didn't know. I didn't read ahead.
No. That's the other good takeaway is learning from all these conversations and Jenny and the SAPICS community. The 54 countries, I believe, that makes up the African continent, and just how all the differences there. Because, Greg, going back to your point, I think when folks use the word Africa, they use it in a very in a very not holistic, but generalized manner. Unfortunately, I think you make the same. I've heard you make several times the same kind of view on the U.S. I think maybe abroad, folks can think of the U.S. in a very generalized sense as well. But as we all know here, as clearly and was illustrated during the pandemic, because you had different states doing different things at different times. There's a lot of differences amongst the 50 states, leadership and otherwise. So I think that's one of the other great learnings here from having these conversations that I particularly enjoyed. I want to call this. Andre has a great comment here. We're talking agricultural supply chain a ton here on the Africa supply chain series here on Supply Chain Now. Andre says the agricultural supply chain nowadays doesn't cover the demand of the population. An example is the avocado exported from Mexico to the U.S. All the local farmers send the best avocados trying to cover the international demand. So to cover the national demand, we import avocados, put chemicals in them to help them grow faster, affecting land and our health. I had no idea, Andrea. Thanks for pointing out. My kids love avocados. In fact, Amanda might chuckle, but Ben really our youngest latched on to the jingle, avocados from Mexico. And he just, we'd ask him on cue, where are avocados from? And he just, he did it for a laugh, but had no idea. It's fascinating, supply and demand. And once you infuse commerce in there, all the transactions that got to take place, Jaco.
Yeah. No, getting back to it, it's just this underlying format of trust that happens in the supply chain, which is we talk about supply chain as this moving chain of stuff that happens, but the fundamental thing that becomes very much relevant in Africa is do I trust you?
That's a great, Greg. That is a wonderful point.
Somebody capture the timestamps of that statement.
Seriously, we're laughing and smiling because we enjoy these conversations. But Greg, trust clearly, it's what makes the world go round. What makes global supply chain take place, right?
It is undoubtedly that. We talk about. We were talking about the local supply chain. Look, supply chain started when I had some grain and you had an arrowhead, and we exchanged it, right? I trusted you to give me a good arrowhead. You trusted me to give you good grain. Beginning of supply chain right there. And it got more and more complex from that point, and the relationships got more and more distant from that point. And as we seek to do, as Andrea just alluded to, as we seek to get things out of season or get things from further around the globe, that trust aspect becomes more important, even more important, and yet more difficult to affirm.
Well stated. All right. So I want to make sure, Jaco, there's so much, as we talked in pre-show, there's only so much we can get in a 50-minute or so conversation. Let's make sure folks can connect with you, Jaco, and then we're going to ask Jenny in the comments for a couple of things about SAPICS. But Jaco, how can folks connect with you and ShiftDX?
I think the best way to connect with me is through LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I do post. Please, send an invite and go through my timeline, because ShiftDX, we tell our story very much through the videos that we post and the specific stories that we want to share. ShiftDX is quite a new company. It's a year old, but I think the difference that we have is we are really making our hands dirty, because creativity is a blue collar work. You really need to be in the land. You need to be in the field. You need to work with the people on the ground. And that's what we do. And we build then from that cool technologies like blockchain and IoT and artificial intelligence and analytics and all of those high level things, but we make it real for the people on the land.
I love that. Go to the Gemba. The folks there in the fields, the folks in our factories, the folks that are doing it, they're the experts, and they're some of the most brilliant people you ever meet. So excellent way to recap that. And as these two comments say, Jenny starts off, ignore Africa and all 54 countries at your peril. Excellent point. And Petri, I believe, I got this wrong, I apologize. Africa is on the brink of an economic takeoff. much like China was 30 years ago and India 20 years ago, kind of as Jaco was pointing out as well.
I see a relationship there, Jaco.
It's actually my brother. Hello, Petri. I appreciate your comment.
Love it. And Jenny points out relationships totally based on trust. Agreed. Great point there. Well, Jaco, always a pleasure. Really enjoyed our time together here today. Appreciate you joining us on this series that we conduct in partnership with SAPICS. All the best, and we'll be reconnecting again with you here real soon.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Greg. It was an absolute pleasure, and all the best to the supply chain now community.
Thank you so much, Jaco.
Thanks, Jaco.
Take care.
Great having you.
Great.
All right. That was, you ever get the impression you're talking to someone that's about 10 degrees a lot smarter than you are?
Every day.
Well, what a sharp, interesting, and there's so much more behind what he shared here today, a lot more stories. But I want to do this, and as we can keep, kind of wrapping up today, Jenny, would love for you to drop the link to the virtual August event in the comments. So we want to make sure folks know how to connect with a lot more stories and business leaders and content from South Africa and across Africa. All right. So Greg, what was one of your favorite aspects of our discussion with the one and only Jaco Maass here today?
Well, there was a couple. One is that he lives next door to I think the most famous surfing point in South Africa, and he didn't mention surfing as one of his recreations, which tells me he really loves digital transformation. Because Jeffrey Bay is one of the most popular spots for great breaks in the whole world, as he told us in the pre-show. So I was stunned to hear that he's not a surfer. The other is the breadth of his experience, and think about how these tie together. As he said, getting your hands dirty started in the agricultural business, learning the numbers by moving to banking and finance, and then ultimately translating that into how to create effectiveness in both of those areas with technology by moving into digital transformation. And I think, one point that wasn't raised here, but it certainly ignited this thought in my mind, and that is that Africa is actually at an incredible advantage for rapid growth. And that is because they lack the infrastructure. They lack the historical infrastructure that actually holds developed countries back. A good, for instance, is a few years ago, I learned about how so many people in especially Northern Africa, they are unbanked. So 80% of the population of Africa at that time was unbanked, meaning they don't have a bank account because they don't have ID. And because they don't get paid enough to be able to, and banks aren't available, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of people are now banking on their phone. Now, that's something we should already have been doing in the developed world, especially Europe and America. But our current banking infrastructure, which again, as I always say, follow the economics, has a lot of money built up in the current infrastructure of banking. Can't allow and won't enable. And I experienced this by traveling around the world, and 7-8 years ago, maybe more, being able to use an international credit card to tap and pay, which now is just now finally coming to America, right? So those advancements in developing countries can come much, much more rapidly by not being encumbered by historical infrastructure. Powerful stuff.
Definitely. And I've gotten smarter just in the last 45 seconds, Greg. So thank you very much.
Did I do that in 45 seconds? It felt like 4 minutes.
57 maybe, but I enjoy your learnings from your global travels. I'm very jealous. I want to share a couple of things here. So Jenny, so y'all can go to sapics.org for news of the big annual event, SAPICS 2021. So y'all check that out. Louis kind of makes the point Greg was making. If Africa's leadership can get sorted out, economic takeoff will quickly follow. Opportunity, hopefully, for all.
Lord, so let's not ruin the mood by counting on politicians.
That's true, and that's that is a global statement. I bet, regardless of your country of citizenship, you can appreciate. Okay, so I hate to starting to wind things down here. Really have enjoyed all the comments. Loved Jaco's story and his thought leadership he shared today. We, of course, we miss Jenny, but hey, this stuff happens, and we're going to catch her on the next show for next month. And Greg, I got to point out, you're wearing Flourish, a wonderful company. I'm hoping we're working on Colton's agent, Colton Griffin, CEO, founder, CEO, on possibly an interview on April 20th. So we'll see if we can connect the dots and make that happen.
Another agricultural industry being disrupted by technology
every day. Every day. Well, hey, thanks everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. Of course, if you enjoyed today's live stream, you can check us out at supplychainnow.com, where we're working hard to serve as the voice of supply chain. And I'm letting this out of the bag. Hey, we're rolling out a new website. It's going to be so much more functional, so much more content, so much more ease of navigation. And so stay tuned for that, supplychainnow.com. All right. Am I in trouble, Greg?
No, we're already in trouble. Okay. Could we be in more trouble, Scott? Really?
Maybe not. But I'm hearing some yelling right around the corner. So I think I might have let something go that I shouldn't have. But hey, folks, it's all about the community. It's all about the folks that tune in here and engage, share, and we want to, how can we? It's always our thought here is how can we make sure that it's as easy and as diverse and as effective as possible, right? So folks can learn wherever you are and can contribute wherever you are. So I really appreciate everybody's role and participation in that journey. So with that said, Greg, really enjoyed today's conversation. On behalf of our entire team here, hopefully everyone has a wonderful end to their week. Do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.